Welcome to the Toffee Blues, your source for all things Everton, and welcome to the final one of our player performance reviews for the 2019-2020 season. And we're going out with a player who's bowed out at the end of this season. And of course, that man is Leighton Baines, club stalwart, naughtiest left back, whatever you want to call him. Obviously didn't play a lot this season. He was very much the understudy to Luca Dean, but he still had time to have his own influence on the team. And of course, this will be the final time we get to discuss Leighton Baines as an Everton player. So it's a pretty sad way to bow out, but to be fair, it's been a pretty sad season, and this is a bit more positive, to be honest. So, we'll get straight into it. Mike, how do you think Baines got on this season, and what sort of game time did it get?
Leighton Baines always has been, and until his final day at the club, an absolute top professional. And even this season, a handful of 8 appearances in the Premier League, most of them obviously off the bench. Scored that absolute belter against Leicester in the Carabao Cup. Someone said it'd probably be the only limbs moment of the season. And it probably was. When that rocket in the top corner, it was a high point in a really poor season. But Leighton Baines conducted himself as he always does. He's just a top professional. For me, he could have done a job for another 12 months, maybe even a couple of years. I know the club was really keen to have him again. So the new kid who's come is Nkunku from Marseille. Keep him, give him 12 months to sort of bed in, maybe go on loan. But it wasn't to be, and it's such a shame, really. I love Leighton Baines, always have done. He was part of one of the best left sides in probably recent Premier League years with him and Stephen P. And I thought, one last absolutely exceptional period, and that wasn't. I just think, he's gone out the way he wants to go out. Really, no fans in the ground. We couldn't wave him off. We couldn't wish him well. And that's Leighton Baines all over it. That's how Leighton Baines would want to go out. None of this fanfare. It's just a shame that we couldn't have won a trophy for him and with him before he left the club. But it's hard to sort of go through what he's done this season because he's only played a handful of games. But all you can say is he's going to be massively missed. Not only by the fans, but I'm sure the players in the club will massively miss a character and a top man like Leighton Baines around the training ground on a regular basis.
Absolutely. Terry, what about you, mate? How do you sort of what do you make of Leighton Baines? Well, I think it's going to turn into a bit of a career review almost, this one, isn't it? But
yeah, I mean, how could it not? I mean, just a modern day Everton, icon. I think his legacy is harmed by how big a club we are. If we were like a smaller club, like a Newcastle, hello Newcastle fans.
That's a great shout right there.
If we were a smaller club like a Newcastle, he'd be like Alan Shearer, a player who was one of the best in the Premier League ever in his position, who turned down medals somewhere else to stay at his boyhood club. Absolute,
that gets you legend status at most teams, but I think we're probably the only club who haven't been successful recently who wouldn't class those kind of players as legends.
Yeah, we were only uncomfortable classing him as a legend because he didn't win a trophy. If that team in 2009 wins that FA Cup, he's easily, comfortably a legend. Same way Duncan Ferguson is, even though Leighton Baines hit heights that Ferguson could never dream of. Ferguson has a medal, and that's the thing that sets him apart.
Yeah.
Baines, you cut him open, he clearly bleeds Everton. He's the consummate professional. The only time he's ever stepped out of line was when he kicked the first break out of the dam for Martinez, and even then he clearly had Everton at heart because it's come out since how bad Martinez was behind the scenes. So he did the club a service there. Not his fault the way the club replaced him in the years that followed, but he clearly had to go, Martinez. Baines, for me, is the best over his whole career left back in the Premier League area. There's other players who are up there with him. I think it's very tight with him and Ashley Cole and Dennis Irwin, but I still...
No, Ashley Cole is close, but I think for me it's always got to be Leighton Baines.
Yeah, probably is biased because I'm an Everton fan, but I just think, I think if Leighton Baines had moved to a more, media-friendly club, if he'd have gone to Man United or, God forbid, he'd have come up at Liverpool instead of Everton, he would have been looked at without question as the best. But because he was at, a non-darling club, he won't get the recognition he deserves. Still got the record for the most assists in the Premier League for a defender. And frankly, this season showed that he's gone out on his own terms, because he showed in the games he played this season, he still had it. He wasn't wrapped. Gary Neville retired when he was finished. He knew he played and he couldn't sack it anymore. Leighton Baines clearly could still hack it.
And let's not forget who retired, Gary Neville. It was actually Leighton Baines. He even said that Pienaar and Baines just taught him a new one in a game, didn't he? And he said, I'm not doing this no more.
Baines could have went for longer. He could have went in the Premier League longer, and he could have went even longer than that in a different league that was a little bit less physically demanding. But he just decided he was gonna wrap it up, because
Leighton Baines does what Leighton Baines wants.
Yeah, he's one of the few players. Like, there's been some players who not overstayed their welcome, that's too harsh, but stayed too long and sort of muddied their legacy a little bit, because it soured the taste at the end. Like Tim Howard is, he's another modern Everton sort of icon, but because he left a little bit too late, it's it put a lot of people off him towards the end. Leighton Baines has gone out on top. Yeah, he was 35. He's the second choice left back, but he was a class act, and this season showed that he could still do it. He still has it, but he just chose that. He knew when his time was up, and we're poorer for not having him, because now we've got an issue. And I'm glad it's just not an even bigger issue, because if we were looking to buy a first team player, it'd be even more difficult. But at least we can look and spend a little bit less, maybe getting a lone player in to cover that position in the squad. But we'll do very well to get any player who's as good as understudy for Luca Dean as Leighton Baines was at the end.
Yeah, I mean, you couldn't really. I think that's what you've got to look at, is that he might not have got the game time, but I think he always trusted in Leighton Baines to come off the bench if something happened to Dean and do a job. And that's probably the best thing you can say about any understudy, really, is that you can depend on an understudy, because you can't always do that.
Yeah, that's the thing. You want to, for any players who are not your first choice, 11 players, you want to look at them and go, would I be comfortable? I apply this to everyone we sign. Like, would I be comfortable with him playing a run of games? Leighton Baines was the easiest one of the whole team. Luca Dean was one of our best players, but if he got an injury and was out for 5 games, you wouldn't be, panicking, going, oh, we're going to be terrible. Some other positions, you'd be going, how are we going to do without him? Some players
we've had to when the likes of Gabaman and Gomez got injured.
Yeah, some players who aren't even as good as Dean or as important as Dean, their understudy, the lack of them makes you worry more than Luca Dean going out, because their understudy was just nowhere near the level that Baines was as Dean's.
Yeah, that's precisely it. I think not many teams. I think we had probably 2, even at his age. I think we still had 2 of the best left backs in the league.
Yeah,
last season. And it's just a shame that Leighton has to bow out with alongside a lot of spineless. Well, yeah, I'll let Terry use his 3 magic words again. I think. What was it?
Actor, camera, man. No, it was fraud, coward, shithouse, wasn't it? Or something like that.
Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah,
that can be applied to many players though in this team, but. I think
that's how Everton Leighton Baines is. He's fucking sick of Everton, so he's fucked us off.
Well, I think we should have been aware of that. I mean, I think when we give the scores at the end in a second, I think I'll touch on this. But the best thing Leighton Baines, I mean, he scored that rocket, but that still wasn't the best thing he'd done this season. My favourite moment was when, in that game where Sigurdsson cowered out of the challenge against Spurs and Baines just side-eyed him as he was getting subbed off.
Yeah, that's he's an Evertonian.
Yeah, I think everyone was every Everton fan, wherever you were watching, that one was side-eyeing Sigurdsson as he went off there. I think that's probably what epitomises it, isn't he? He probably gets the fans as well, I think.
The finishing shot of Leighton Baines on Sky Sports was him just playing with his nose.
Yeah.
It's just the epitome of not asked. It's like there's no pose and nothing like that, no grandstanding, no coming off on the 3rd minute, to the rounds of applause, just sitting on the bench, just make how squashy is my nose.
Nah, he's an absolute class act, and he served the club brilliantly. And yeah, well, I mean, there's not much more to touch on this season, but we'll just have to go into a bit more detail about that goal against Leicester.
I always say, that was me. I said about being the only Limbs moments of the season. That was my daughter's first ever Limbs moments in a Gladys Street as well, when he rifled that in. And I've obviously grown up through the years with Leighton Baines and lucky enough to see him, for many, many years. But I think to see that this season and try and explain to her, listen, this is how good this man is and how good he was on a regular basis. And as I said, the only downside is we couldn't go on and win. I mean, imagine him, winning that this season, that trophy, and what a way to sort of go out that would have been for him. But he's just a total class act, and I'm really surprised we haven't seen him and Luca Dean playing alongside on the left hand side together. I think that would have worked in numerous games. One goes, one sits, and I think that would have worked. For numerous times when we've struggled and our wingers have struggled as well. Those two, they're both technically very, very good. Both great going forward. Luca Dean, I think, has probably improved defensively as well this season, so that would have been an option. But we're not going to see it. They're not going to see Leighton Baines again, unfortunately. But that Leicester game, for that to be one of the highlights in a poor season, is great for Leighton Baines in terms of, this man can still operate at that level. But like Terry said, he's chosen to go out, when he's still comfortable, he can still play the game. And we were led to believe he was probably going to go to America before the coronavirus hit, because he was due to go over there and play a couple of seasons there. But obviously, with what's gone on, it didn't happen. But listen, he'd be quite happy sitting there listening to the jam in his house, playing his guitar for the rest of his life, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, like we said, I think it's just Leighton Baines does what Leighton Baines wants, and I think what's most enjoyable is the fact that, although it was a bit bittersweet, that goal, the last ever goal Leighton Baines scored, was that absolute rocket, and that is literally bombing out on a high, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's like Mike said, it's just a shame we couldn't go on to win the trophy for him, and that trophy would have been almost the ideal one. Like, I mean, in a decade where players and managers have let Everton down a lot, Leighton Baines is one of the very few where Everton let him down. Like, we should have won a trophy while we had him. He was that level of quality, and there were times where we could have done it but didn't. So I just that's the abiding Leighton Baines memory. One last rocket goal. Forget the game. Forget how it went on to penalties. Just a time when mid-December, Duncan Ferguson in the dugout, the chips are down, and he even at that age, he just pulls one out for us like that.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I think it is. It's as close to legend status as we can give anyone in the last 20 years, isn't it? Really?
Yeah, definitely.
No doubt. So we'll finish with that anyway. We'll get our scores out of 10. Michael, Leighton Baines out of 10.
Well, it's 10. I'm not going to give him any less than 10. And whether that's based on his career or what have you, handful of games, I don't care. He's a top player. Probably my favourite Everton player since I've been supporting the club. So 10 out of 10 for Leighton Baines for me. And he's an Everton legend as well.
Teddy?
Stole a march on me. 10. It's a small sample size. It's not even based on his career. It's a small sample size. He didn't have one bad minute of football. It's getting a 10. Leighton Baines. The naughtiest.
Nah, to be honest, I think, Mike, you're well in your right mind for the memories it's given you there with your daughter as well. That's 10 out of 10 stuff there in itself, innit? So that's brilliant stuff. And I mean, I think it's one of them. You can't give Leighton Baines. I think, if I've just said it, he's as close to legend status as you can get. So I'm going to give him. It's a unanimous decision. I'm going to give him a 10 out of 10 as well. I mean, again, I think even if you were over exaggerating it a bit, Terry, you nailed it there. Like, he didn't put a foot wrong. And for someone that in his late 30s now and not getting much game time, he always stepped up when needed to, and brilliantly. 10 out of 10 for Leighton Baines, and we'll leave it at that. And just before we go, we'll have to mention the ice cream van again, because that's what better way to finish than just ordering 99 off the ice, you know what I mean?
Little did we know that was as good as it was going to get for a long time. It never ever got that good again.
No, it never did, apart from the Arsenal game, like the week after when we won 3-0. That was the high point of my entire Everton supporting life.
The best week in Evertondom.
What we beat Arsenal and Leighton Baines as a Solero or something.
Yeah.
So there you have it, guys. We bow out on a high. Leighton Baines gets a unanimous 10 out of 10 off everyone, and why the hell not? Because he's boss. Let us know how you think Leighton Baines got on this season and in his career, of course. Give this video a like, give the channel a subscribe, and ring the bell for the notifications and all that stuff. And until next time, thank you for watching on the Toffee Blues.